Victoria Matthews closed the app with an abrupt gesture and tossed her phone onto the table, drawing discreet glances from customers around her. The sound of her cup being set down too forcefully on the saucer echoed through the quiet atmosphere of Café Lumière in Manhattan's Upper East Side. 30 minutes of waiting. No message, no explanation, no sign whatsoever from the woman who had agreed to meet her that Thursday afternoon. There was something peculiarly humiliating about being left waiting. She, who made international investors wait in anterooms, who never had to chase anything or anyone in her life. Business and relationships had always come to Victoria, drawn by the magnetic force of her presence and the shine of her success. And now here she was, checking her watch for the 10th time, like an anxious teenager on a first date. The coffee was lukewarm, forgotten, just as she herself seemed to be. Victoria ran her hand through her impeccably cut dark hair, feeling tension accumulate in her jaw. Outside, New York City continued its frenetic movement as always, indifferent to the small drama unfolding inside the cafe. Horns, voices, the constant flow of hurried people. Everything followed its relentless rhythm, while she waited for someone who might never appear. Rachel Bennett, 34, teacher. The simple description on the app had attracted her precisely because of what it didn't say. No photos on exotic beaches, no elaborate poses at expensive restaurants, no studied angles screaming, "Look at me." Just a woman with wavy brown hair and expressive green eyes, a contained and natural smile, looking directly at the camera with an honesty that seemed genuine, a word that had become almost mythological in Victoria's vocabulary. The idea of meeting someone who didn't know who she really was had been seductive from the start. Victoria Matthews, 40 investment consultant, the half-truth that hid the CEO of Matthews Capital, one of the largest real estate and venture capital fund managers in the country, with over $2 billion under her management. Her Italian blazer rested on the chair beside her, carefully folded. She had left her Cartier watch at home, opting for a more discreet model. Almost pathetic attempts to seem less than what she was, a woman whose 9-figure net worth defined all her relationships before they even began. "Anything else, ma'am?" asked the waitress, a middle-aged woman with a kind, tired expression. "The check, please." There was a limit to the ridiculous, and Victoria had certainly reached it. 30 minutes. If her executives made her wait 5 minutes, it would be cause for a serious conversation about respect and professionalism. The thought brought an ironic smile to her well-defined lips. How pathetic her current state was, comparing a failed date to a business meeting. Perhaps she was lonelier than she admitted, even to herself. She picked up her phone again, ready to delete the app once and for all. The genuine connections it promised seemed as false as everything else in her carefully constructed life. Who was she kidding? People like her didn't have the luxury of authenticity. Success and vulnerability were incompatible, or so she had been taught. That's when she felt the light tug on the sleeve of her silk blouse. Victoria looked down, irritated by the intrusion, and found a pair of enormous brown eyes staring at her with disconcerting intensity. A small girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, light blonde hair tied in messy braids, pink dress with small stains that betrayed an afternoon of adventures and discoveries. "Hi," she said simply, studying Victoria with childlike curiosity, completely devoid of any social filter. Victoria looked around, searching for negligent parents or guardians, but saw no one paying attention to the child. The cafe wasn't large, but it was busy enough to create small blind spots between tables and the counter. "Hello," Victoria responded, formal and visibly uncomfortable. Children were not part of her meticulously organized universe. In her corporate world, they were abstract concepts, topics of conversation at charity dinners, statistics in social impact reports, not real beings who pulled strangers' sleeves in cafes. "Are you the lady from the picture?" the girl asked, tilting her head slightly to the side, like a curious bird. "What picture?" The question came out more sharply than Victoria intended, an automatic reflex of her growing impatience and discomfort, at not being in control of the situation. "The picture on my mommy's phone," she responded, unfazed by the coldness. "You look like the lady in the picture, but you're making a grumpy face." The comment caught her completely off guard, and Victoria felt her irritation dissolve momentarily into genuine confusion. Her analytical mind began processing information quickly, connecting dots that didn't yet form a clear picture. "And who's your mom?" she asked, a suspicion dawning in her mind like a hesitant sunrise. The girl opened a wide smile where a front tooth was missing, a smile that carried all the innocence in the world. "My mommy's almost here. She's looking for a parking spot. It's really hard to find one around here." Then, as if it were perfectly natural to sit with strangers in cafes, she climbed onto the empty chair in front of Victoria with the ease of someone accustomed to making friends wherever she went. "My name is Sophie Bennett, but you can call me Sophie. I'm 5.5. The half is very important." The last name hit Victoria like an unexpected punch to the stomach, stealing her breath for an instant. Bennett. The woman from the app was Rachel Bennett. The pieces began falling into place with simultaneously uncomfortable and enlightening clarity. "Is your mom Rachel?" Victoria asked, trying to keep her voice neutral while her heart raced. "Yes." The girl seemed genuinely impressed. "How do you know? Are you magic?" Victoria tried to quickly process the flood of information and emotions. The woman she had conversed with for 2 weeks through carefully crafted messages, with whom she had scheduled this meeting and waited for 30 long minutes, had a daughter. A daughter she had never, at any point, mentioned. A complex sensation grew in her chest, a mix of having been deceived and an irrational relief at not having been simply abandoned without explanation. But why hadn't Rachel spoken about the child? Was it strategic, calculated, or simply fear of scaring away a potential partner before they even met? If you're enjoying this story, leave your like and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. Your support means everything and helps me continue bringing emotional stories to you. "Sophie," a female voice, slightly breathless and loaded with maternal concern, cut through Victoria's thoughts. "What did I tell you about talking to strangers?" Victoria slowly raised her gaze and finally saw Rachel Bennett in person for the first time. The photo didn't lie, which was already rare enough to be notable in a world of filters and deceptive angles. Wavy brown hair tied in an improvised messy bun, some loose strands framing a face without makeup, flushed from what had clearly been a race against time and chaotic New York traffic. She wore simple faded jeans and a basic teal cotton blouse. Nothing flashy, nothing manufactured or performative. Her green eyes met Victoria's directly, without the submission or calculated seduction she frequently witnessed in gazes directed at her when people discovered her position. There wasn't that mixture of calculation and material interest that Victoria had learned to despise over the years. There was something different in that gaze, a mix of determination, authentic vulnerability, and a silent strength that instantly intrigued her. "I'm so sorry for being late," Rachel said, alternating her gaze between her daughter and Victoria with an expression of genuine embarrassment. "Sorry for this." She gestured vaguely toward the girl, who was now drawing something imaginary on the table with her index finger, completely oblivious to the adult tension around her. "I didn't have anyone to leave her with. I should have told you. Should have been honest from the beginning." There was a disarming honesty in her voice, without unnecessary elaborations, without dramatic or manipulative excuses, just the simple truth presented without great expectations of understanding or forgiveness. Victoria immediately realized she was in completely unknown territory. Her previous relationships, the few she had allowed to happen, followed a predictable and safe script. Women who knew exactly who she was, what she possessed, and, inevitably, what they wanted from her. Even those who pretended disinterest in her money and power eventually revealed themselves, showing their true intentions. It was a tiresome game that Victoria knew all too well, like a chess match whose moves had already been memorized. But this, a late mother with a 5-year-old child who talked to strangers without any fear? This wasn't in any manual she had ever read or lived. "You didn't mention you had a daughter," Victoria said finally, her voice carefully neutral and controlled, maintaining the executive composure that defined her. "I didn't mention many things," Rachel responded, gripping the strap of her worn fabric bag tighter, her knuckles turning white. "Just like you, I imagine." There was something challenging in her tone. Not aggressive or defensive, but firm and direct, as if she too was evaluating, judging, deciding whether Victoria was worth her scarce and precious time. The role reversal was as unexpected as it was strangely refreshing for someone accustomed to always being in control. "Mommy, can I have hot chocolate?" interrupted Sophie, completely oblivious to the palpable tension between the two adult women, her voice carrying that hopeful expectation, typical of childhood. Rachel visibly hesitated, looking first at Victoria, then at her daughter, clearly calculating not just the financial cost, but also the social cost of the moment. "I don't think we're staying, sweetie. Ms. Matthews probably has other important commitments." "Victoria," she corrected softly, surprising herself with the gesture. "You can just call me Victoria." Something indefinable passed across Rachel's face, perhaps relief, confusion, or simply genuine surprise. "Well, Victoria," she tested the name on her tongue. "I appreciate your understanding and patience. I didn't mean to waste your time like this." There was impressive dignity in her posture, without self-pity, without emotional manipulation, without attempts to gain sympathy through solo motherhood. Rachel was simply offering Victoria a clear and honest exit, respecting her right not to want to participate in a date that included a completely unexpected child. Victoria found herself at an internal crossroads. The rational part of her brain, the same one that had built a $2 billion empire by meticulously calculating risks and returns, analyzing every variable before making decisions, said to accept the offered exit. Stand up gracefully, politely say goodbye, and forget this failed meeting before it really began. Return to her silent penthouse, to her predictable meetings, to the comfortable and familiar solitude. But there was something in those two pairs of eyes watching her, one green and intelligent, the other brown and innocent, something authentic and unrehearsed that challenged all the carefully established standards she was accustomed to. There was real life there, not the edited and filtered version she normally encountered. As the silence stretched between them like a fragile bridge over turbulent waters, Victoria realized she was facing a choice that none of her billions could influence or buy. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't know with certainty what her decision would be. "Please sit down," Victoria said finally, the words coming out before she could analyze them completely through her usual cost-benefit lens. It was a rare phenomenon in her meticulously calculated life, acting on genuine impulse instead of cold strategy. The relief on Rachel's face was subtle but perceptible to those who knew how to observe. She adjusted the worn bag on her shoulder before gently pulling out the chair for her daughter, her movements revealing years of practice doing everything alone. "Are you sure?" she asked in a low voice while helping Sophie settle properly in the chair. "You don't have to be polite or politically correct. I completely understand if you'd prefer another day, under different circumstances." "I'm here, aren't I?" Victoria responded, drier than she actually intended, the professional tone escaping automatically. Rachel studied her for a prolonged moment, her green eyes evaluating something beyond the carefully polished surface, as if trying to read between the lines of a person accustomed to never revealing her true cards. "Yes, you are," she finally agreed, sitting down carefully. "And I genuinely appreciate that. I know it's not exactly what you expected for a Thursday afternoon." The waitress approached with her notepad, and Victoria noticed she was still holding between her fingers the black credit card she had mentally set aside to pay her bill and leave, escape this uncomfortable and unpredictable situation. She discreetly returned it to her pants pocket. "A hot chocolate for the little one, please," she ordered before Rachel could interfere or protest. Can you bring it with whipped cream? It wasn't performative generosity, she told herself, just basic civility and politeness. With marshmallows too? Asked Sophie hopefully, her eyes shining with that pure joy only children can express for simple things. No marshmallows today, sweetie, Rachel responded firmly but without severity, her voice carrying natural maternal authority. We already had ice cream earlier, remember? Everything has limits. And for you, ma'am? Asked the waitress, looking at Rachel. Just water, please. Thank you. Victoria raised a questioning eyebrow, genuinely surprised. You came to a specialty cafe and you're going to order water. Limited budget, Rachel responded with disconcerting simplicity, without any trace of embarrassment or self-pity. Choices need to be made constantly. Priorities. It was another surprise in an afternoon already full of them. The women Victoria knew socially normally pretended disinterest in money, even when it was evident they cared too much about status and appearances. They pretended not to mentally calculate the price of each menu item. They pretended not to be impressed by imported cars, Swiss watches, or Michelin-starred restaurants. Rachel's direct frankness was simultaneously disconcerting and refreshing, like a glass of cold water on a suffocating day. A coffee for the lady as well, Victoria told the waitress. And another espresso for me, please. Rachel opened her mouth as if to protest automatically, but then closed it, reconsidering. She opted for a simple thank you that carried neither subservience nor exaggerated gratitude, just dignified acceptance of a kind gesture. A dense silence settled between the two adult women, filled only by the ambient sounds of the cafe. Sophie, completely oblivious to the emotional tension, began methodically organizing the available sugar packets on the table into precise and symmetrical rows, humming quietly, a song she had probably learned at school. So, Victoria began, desperately seeking the safe ground of conventional and neutral questions. Elementary school teacher, right? Second grade, Rachel responded, slightly relaxing her tense shoulders. Public school in Brooklyn. 7- and 8-year-olds discovering they can read on their own. Do you like what you do? Asked Victoria, genuinely curious despite herself. A true smile illuminated Rachel's face, completely transforming her simple features into something notably more captivating and vibrant. I love it deeply. Seeing a child finally discovering reading, that magical moment when letters stop being random symbols and start making sense, telling stories. It's like witnessing small daily miracles. I never get tired of it. There was genuine passion in her voice, something Victoria recognized precisely because of its absolute rarity. In her corporate world of investments and strategic acquisitions, true passion for work was frequently replaced by passion for measurable results, generous bonuses, and public recognition. And what specifically drew you to education? Victoria asked, her professional curiosity being activated. Why choose such a challenging and, frankly, poorly compensated path? Rachel hesitated briefly, as if carefully considering how much to reveal to a virtual stranger on an already atypical first date. I had a teacher who literally changed my life when I was a child, she began, briefly looking at Sophie, who continued entertained with her improvised organizing game. After my father abandoned us, I was 8 years old. She noticed I was completely lost, falling academically, isolating myself socially. She dedicated extra time to help me, lent me books, talked to me about things that went beyond the subject matter. She made a significant pause, choosing words carefully. Some people see us when everyone else looks through us as if we were invisible. She saw me. I want to be that kind of person for other children who need it. I want to be the one who sees. The drinks arrived at that precise moment, interrupting the emotional intensity of the conversation. Sophie immediately brightened with her hot chocolate covered in whipped cream, carefully blowing on the steaming surface with adorable concentration. And you, Victoria? Rachel began, clearly trying to reciprocate the courtesy of questions and balance the conversation. Investment consulting seems interesting, challenging. Victoria felt the familiar and almost irresistible impulse to impress, to elaborate about her true position as CEO of one of the country's largest management firms, her financial empire built brick by brick. It was a deeply conditioned reflex after years navigating social circles where status determined human value and open doors. "I help people and companies make strategic decisions about investments," she responded vaguely, consciously opting for simplicity and half-truth. It was technically correct. It just conveniently omitted the billion-dollar scale under her direct management. "That must be really rewarding," Rachel commented, gently blowing on her latte. "Helping people build financial security, plan futures, realize dreams." Victoria almost laughed out loud at the irony. The overwhelming majority of her clients already possessed more financial security than they could spend in several luxurious lifetimes. What they sought wasn't security. It was exponential multiplication of already obscene wealth. It was power. It was status. "Sometimes security," she responded diplomatically, "and sometimes it's just about numbers on digital screens. Financial abstractions." Oh. Their gazes met over the coffee cups, and Victoria had the strange and disturbing sensation that Rachel saw through her evasive response, seeing beyond the carefully chosen words. "Mommy also works with numbers," Sophie unexpectedly intervened, an adorable whipped cream mustache adorning her upper lip. "She stays up late doing calculations every end of the month. I use her colored pencils sometimes." "Sophie, finish your chocolate," Rachel said softly, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Financial problems?" Victoria asked directly, immediately perceiving her mistake by the abrupt way Rachel's body visibly tensed. "Management of limited resources," she corrected, using exactly the same words as before, but with a newly acquired coldness that created an almost tangible barrier between them. "Nothing I can't solve on my own. I always have." The pride in her voice was palpable and familiar. Victoria immediately recognized that feeling. It was the same that had propelled her since she left Chicago still a teenager, with only a full scholarship and lots of determination burning in her chest. Before the abundant money, before the corporate empire, before the articles in Forbes and Fortune, there was only the absolute refusal to be defeated by adverse circumstances. "I worked as a waitress throughout college," Victoria said suddenly, surprising herself with the unfiltered personal revelation. "Business administration during the day, trays of drinks and food at night. Double shifts on weekends." Rachel's green eyes immediately softened, the momentary barrier lowering like a drawbridge. "What happened after?" she asked, genuinely interested. "I got an internship at a small investment firm on Wall Street. Worked like my life depended on it. The rest is..." She hesitated carefully, not wanting to lie directly, but also not ready to reveal the entire complex truth. "The rest is history. A long history." "Stories are very important," Sophie commented with disproportionate seriousness, wiping her mouth with the paper napkin. "My teacher, Ms. Johnson, says stories are our invisible treasures. Each person has one." Victoria looked at the child, genuinely disconcerted by the unexpected wisdom coming from someone so small. Children, in her extremely limited experience, were noisy beings in the background of obligatory social events. Small entities mentioned in corporate conversations about expensive private schools and impressive extracurricular activities used as status symbols. "Your teacher, Ms. Johnson, seems very smart," Victoria responded, completely uncertain how to properly dialogue with someone so young. "Not as smart as Mommy," Sophie responded with absolute loyalty. "Mommy knows absolutely everything. She even fixes things that break, like the bathroom faucet that was dripping all night and the shower that made weird noises." Rachel seemed divided between maternal embarrassment and genuine pride. Victoria noticed, fascinated, how her eyes literally shone when looking at her daughter. A love so transparent and unconditional, It almost seemed tangible in the air between them. "Sounds like you're much more than just a teacher," Victoria commented with genuine admiration. "I'm a single mom," Rachel responded with that disconcerting simplicity that characterized her. "That necessarily means being a bit of everything. Improvised electrician, amateur plumber, household accountant, driver, cook, nurse, child psychologist." She smiled with self-irony. "Some roles I definitely perform better than others." There was something deeply refreshing about her total frankness. In the complete absence of the elaborate social performance Victoria was painfully accustomed to witnessing and even performing. No attempt to seem perfect or have everything under control. No effort to hide natural imperfections. Just the simple and raw truth of her daily life. "And Sophie's other mom?" Victoria asked carefully, immediately regretting it when she saw Rachel's face close slightly, a shadow crossing her features. "Hasn't been part of the picture for a long time," she responded succinctly, her voice carefully neutral. Then, with a resigned sigh, "Disappeared completely when she found out I was pregnant. Just vanished. Blocked my number. Moved to another state." "Typical, I suppose." Sophie continued organizing packets, apparently oblivious to the adult conversation. But Victoria noticed with a tightness in her heart how her small shoulders tensed subtly. The girl had heard that story before, probably many times. "I'm sorry," Victoria said, feeling awkward and inadequate. Deep emotional territory definitely wasn't her forte. "It's okay," Rachel responded with visible determination. "It's part of who we are now, our story." Then, with deliberate effort to change the heavy subject. "And you? Family? Serious relationships?" "No," Victoria responded simply, almost defensively. "Just myself. It's always been that way." "Girlfriend?" asked Sophie suddenly, looking directly at Victoria with that childlike curiosity, totally devoid of social filters. "Sophie," Rachel warned, visibly mortified. "That's invasive." "What?" The girl seemed genuinely confused. "You said yesterday you were looking for a nice princess on your phone, like in the movies." "She's not a princess, but she's pretty and has a shiny watch." Victoria couldn't absolutely contain a genuine smile at the brutal honesty characteristic of children and the growing and adorable embarrassment of Rachel, whose face now assumed an intense shade of red that spread to her ears. "I don't currently have a girlfriend, no," Victoria responded directly to the girl, finding that approach more honest. "And thank you very much for the compliment about the watch, Sophie. You have good taste." "I think we really should go," Rachel said suddenly, placing the cup on the saucer with a nervous little clink. "We still need to stop by the grocery store before going home. There's homework waiting." Victoria immediately perceived that Rachel was fleeing, deeply embarrassed by her daughter's innocent indiscretion. Surprisingly, and this surprised her as much as anything else that extraordinary afternoon, she didn't want them to leave yet. The conversation, despite being occasionally uncomfortable and unpredictable, was genuinely the most authentic she'd had in countless years. "We still have to buy ingredients for dinner," Rachel continued, already pulling the chair back to stand up, clearly preparing a quick exit. "It was a pleasure meeting you in person, Victoria, and thank you sincerely for the coffee." "Wait," Victoria said, the word coming out with more urgency than she intended. Rachel paused, looking at her with surprise and caution. "I mean," Victoria consciously softened her tone, "you don't need to leave because of this. Kids say exactly what they think without filters. It's honest. Refreshing, actually." Rachel studied her face intently, as if searching for signs of condescension, fakeness, or that type of forced tolerance that people sometimes demonstrate. "Even so, it really is getting late," she insisted, but with visibly less urgency. "School day, strict routine, you understand." "Of course," Victoria quickly agreed, raising her hand to call the waitress. "At least let me pay the whole bill." "That's not necessary at all," Rachel protested, already reaching for her own worn purse. "You already paid for our drinks. That's more than enough and generous." "Please," Victoria said, and something indefinable in her tone. Not arrogance, not ostentation, but something closer to a genuine request made Rachel pause completely. After a prolonged moment of visible hesitation, Rachel nodded minimally, an almost imperceptible gesture of reluctant acceptance. While Victoria discreetly paid, Rachel helped Sophie put on her faded but clean pink cardigan. The girl yawned widely, the accumulated tiredness of the day finally manifesting in her little eyes that fought to stay open. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Sophie," Victoria said, surprising herself again with the deep sincerity of her own words. "Will you see Mommy again?" the girl asked directly, completely ignoring all adult social conventions as only small children can do perfectly. Victoria looked at Rachel, whose expression was an extremely complex mixture of carefully contained hope and protective caution. "If she wants to see me again," Victoria responded simply, honestly. The moment that followed seemed charged with unspoken possibilities, potential futures hovering in the air like dust particles illuminated by sunlight. The cafe around them continued its characteristic buzz, customers coming and going, overlapping conversations, the barista calling out orders. But for Victoria, the world had been reduced to that small space charged with electricity between them. A billionaire CEO pretending to be a simple consultant, a teacher courageously fighting to balance all the impossible facets of her life, and a child who didn't know, and probably never would know, how to pretend to be less authentic than she was. "Maybe," Rachel said finally, a hesitant and cautious smile emerging at the corner of her full lips. "But next time, if there is a next time, no unexpected surprises from either side." Victoria nodded, feeling something unusual and almost forgotten stir in her chest. Not the familiar adrenaline of a successful deal, not the calculated satisfaction of a lucrative acquisition, but something infinitely more primitive and frightening. Hope. Genuine hope for human connection. "See you later, lady with the shiny watch." Sophie said goodbye, waving energetically as she walked hand in hand with her mother toward the glass door. Victoria remained seated, watching them through the large window as they walked away down the busy sidewalk. Sophie occasionally jumping over imaginary cracks, Rachel adjusting the bag on her shoulder with that gesture Victoria already recognized as characteristic. An absolutely everyday common scene, devoid of any glamour or sophistication. So why? Victoria asked herself. Couldn't she simply look away and move on with her perfectly organized life? 3 full days had passed since the unexpected meeting at the cafe. 3 days in which Victoria found herself shamefully distracted during crucial meetings with international investors, completely losing the thread of important financial presentations, checking her phone with absolutely embarrassing frequency for an executive of her caliber. "The consolidated quarterly reports you requested, Ms. Matthews." Beatrice, her executive assistant for an impressive 10 years, deposited an organized folder on the mahogany desk. Impeccably efficient as always, she remained standing for a few seconds, an unusual behavior that finally captured Victoria's scattered attention. "Any specific problem, B?" she asked, turning to face her directly. "The board of directors has been waiting in the conference room for 15 minutes, Beatrice responded with the professional neutrality that characterized her, though Victoria easily detected a subtle note of concern in her normally controlled voice. 15 minutes. Victoria automatically checked her discreet watch. She who never in her entire meteoric career was late for appointments. Never missed meetings. Absolute and almost obsessive control over every aspect of her life was a fundamental and definitive part of who she had become. "Please offer my formal apologies. I'll be there in exactly 2 minutes," she said, already gathering the necessary documents with mechanical movements. Beatrice nodded professionally and left silently, closing the door softly. Victoria picked up her phone one last time, scrolling through the screen until she found the dating app she should have deleted days ago. No new messages from Rachel. She herself also hadn't written absolutely anything. What would she say anyway? Thank you for the meeting where you brought your daughter without any prior warning. Or worse. I can't stop thinking about you and I don't even know exactly why. With an irritated gesture at herself, she put away the phone and headed to the meeting that awaited her. 7 hours later, Victoria entered her penthouse apartment. The impeccable triplex in Tribeca was a true monument to luxurious minimalism and refined taste. Imported rare woods, Italian Carrara marble, Brazilian contemporary artwork strategically positioned by a renowned curator. The automated and intelligent lighting gradually turned on, sophisticated sensors recognizing her presence. Everything absolutely perfect, perfectly controlled, perfectly sterile and empty. She loosened her structured blazer as she walked to the built-in bar, generously serving herself a 21-year-old aged Scotch whiskey. The amber liquid burned pleasantly down her throat, bringing a recognizable but temporary warmth. The city majestically stretched around her through the panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows, a true infinite carpet of twinkling lights that normally made her feel, what exactly? Powerful? Accomplished? Satisfied? Her phone vibrated. For an absolutely ridiculous second, she felt an irrational jump of pure adrenaline. But it was just an automatic notification from the financial news app about volatility in Asian markets. The oppressive silence of the expensive apartment seemed to echo and multiply. Was this it then? The supposed apex of professional and financial success? A woman completely alone in a penthouse that cost millions, drinking rare whiskey most people could never afford, receiving cold alerts about impersonal global market fluctuations? Without consciously planning, she picked up her phone again and opened the app. Rachel's simple profile was still exactly there. Her contained and natural smile, looking directly at the camera without calculated false poses, without elaborate beautification filters, just a woman with wavy brown hair and deeply intelligent green eyes. Before she could think excessively and rationalize herself out of the action, she quickly typed, "Still interested in that coffee without unexpected surprises?" She pressed send and immediately felt a disturbing mix of acute regret and inexplicable relief. She deliberately placed the phone on the marble coffee table, absolutely determined not to obsessively check for responses like an anxious teenager in her first relationship. She was 40 years old, had $2 billion under management, and a solid reputation for calculated coldness in the most complex business dealings. She definitely wouldn't be checking her phone every 30 seconds. 3 minutes later, she was checking her phone. Nothing yet. Of course, she was probably extremely busy with maternal responsibilities, helping Sophie with complicated homework, preparing a nutritious dinner on a limited budget, giving a bath, reading bedtime stories. All those 1,000 daily responsibilities a single mother faced constantly. Practical realities that Victoria only knew theoretically, through abstract reports and superficial conversations. She decided to take a long, hot shower, a conscious attempt to cleanse not just her tired body, but also this strange restlessness that had dominated her since the surreal meeting at the cafe. Under the strong, massaging jet of the luxury Italian shower, she firmly closed her eyes, trying to recalibrate and reorganize her scattered thoughts. What was she really seeking? Rachel was a public school teacher with a limited salary, a single mother probably living in a modest apartment, existing in a world completely different and distant from her luxury corporate universe. She didn't even know yet who Victoria really was, the full extent of her wealth and power. And there was Sophie, the 5.5-year-old girl. Children had never been part of her carefully planned life equation. Ever. When she finally came out of the bathroom wrapped in a silk robe, the first thing she did, deeply embarrassing herself, was immediately check her phone. There were 2 new messages. Her heart literally raced. Depends completely. Are you going to show up as an investment consultant or as who you really are behind that facade? Victoria felt a genuine chill run down her spine that absolutely nothing had to do with being fresh out of a hot shower. How did Rachel know? Had she researched online? Had someone informed her? What information exactly had she discovered? Another sound alert. Second message. Google exists, Victoria, and your photo is on the cover of Forbes this month. Victoria Matthews, the Midas of American investments. I was impressed, and not positively, with my own naivety. Victoria closed her eyes for a prolonged moment, a deeply uncomfortable sensation settling heavily in her stomach. Of course, the damn promotional cover story. The entire public relations department had insisted so much, eloquently arguing about the strategic importance of public visibility to attract new, high-net-worth international investors. She had reluctantly given in against all her privacy instincts. Her fingers hovered uncertainly over the illuminated screen. The truth was now the only viable and honest option. She carefully typed, "You're absolutely right. I should have been completely honest from the beginning. Can we talk about this in person? I deserve the chance to explain." The response came surprisingly quickly this time, as if Rachel was holding her phone, waiting. For what exactly? To explain to me why a billionaire needs to lie to meet ordinary people? Or to have fun watching how the other side lives? Must be fascinating as an anthropological experiment. The acidity was absolutely palpable even through the typed words. Victoria felt an immediate defensive impulse to justify herself, to explain in detail that it wasn't any of that she was genuinely tired of people interested exclusively in her financial assets. But she realized instantly how it would sound. Pathetic. The poor billionaire, lonely on her golden throne, complaining about excessive attention. She typed with redoubled care. It wasn't cheap fun or a social experiment. It was deep exhaustion. Exhaustion from never really knowing if people like me, or just my money and connections. She sent it and immediately regretted it. It sounded like privileged self-pity, exactly what she desperately wanted to avoid. 3 animated dots appeared indicating Rachel was typing. They disappeared abruptly, reappeared, disappeared again. Victoria realized she was literally holding her breath, waiting. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity compressed, tomorrow, same cafe, 5:30 p.m. Sophie stays at my sister's on Thursdays. Adult conversation. No innocent intermediaries. Concise, direct, without apparent emotion in the chosen words. Even so, Victoria felt disproportionate relief flood her tense chest. "I'll be there punctually," she responded with simplicity. She carefully set the phone aside and finished the expensive whiskey in a single long gulp, feeling the alcoholic warmth spread through her body. Tomorrow, a second chance she honestly wasn't sure she deserved. Café Lumière seemed subtly different during the busy rush hour on Thursday late afternoon. Louder, more agitated, definitely less conducive to intimate and vulnerable conversations. Victoria deliberately arrived 20 minutes early, strategically choosing a discreet and relatively isolated table in the back of the establishment. Today there would absolutely be no delays on her part, no margin for additional errors. She had dressed with meticulous and studied care, dark designer jeans that looked casual but cost more than a monthly teacher's salary, immaculate white linen shirt, structured navy blue blazer without flashy accessories. No jewelry besides discreet pearl earrings. The expensive watch had purposefully stayed at home. She wanted to seem accessible and real without completely denying who she was. No more fabricated characters. No more elaborate pretenses. She ordered a simple Americano and waited, unconsciously drumming her fingers on the rustic wooden table. At precisely 5:25 p.m., the glass door opened with the characteristic tinkle of the little bell. Rachel entered, a striking contrast with the surrounding environment in her authentic and unpretentious simplicity. Basic faded jeans, simple emerald green blouse that beautifully enhanced her expressive eyes, wavy brown hair tied in an uncomplicated ponytail. She carried the same worn fabric bag on her shoulder and held what appeared to be a considerable pile of school tests to grade. Their gazes met immediately across the busy space. For a brief but significant moment, Victoria saw clear hesitation in Rachel's face, as if she was still seriously considering simply turning around and leaving, avoiding all that unnecessary complication. Then, with a determined slight raising of her chin, that gesture Victoria already instantly recognized as a sign of courage, Rachel walked decidedly to the table. "Good afternoon," she said, sitting down directly without unnecessary ceremonies. "Good afternoon. Thank you for really coming," Victoria responded, acutely perceiving how she sounded too formal, almost corporate. "I know you weren't obligated." "I was moved by genuine curiosity," Rachel admitted with characteristic frankness. "I wanted to understand personally what type of person needs to build a false facade to meet other people, and mainly why." There was palpable tension contained in her voice. Not exactly explosive anger, but a complex mixture of disappointment, challenge, and something that looked like carefully guarded hurt. Without Sophie as a natural emotional buffer, the conversation promised to be significantly more direct, more intense, more difficult. "I didn't pretend to be a completely different person," Victoria defended herself automatically. Then she paused, reconsidering. "Not completely, at least. I am an investment consultant, technically. Just on a considerably different scale than I implied. On a billionaire scale, to be absolutely precise," Rachel completed without any beating around the bush. "I read the entire Forbes article. Very impressive, by the way. The woman who transformed 50 million inherited dollars into a 2 billion empire in just 15 years. Really remarkable. There was something indefinable in her tone that definitely wasn't simple admiration, nor direct contempt. A kind of cautious and evaluative neutrality that Victoria rarely encountered. "The magazine numbers are slightly exaggerated for dramatic effect," she responded, genuinely uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Sensationalist business journalism. Are they really?" Rachel raised a perfectly skeptical eyebrow. "So tell me, what's the real and precise value of Matthew's capital currently?" "That's not exactly what I came here to talk about," Victoria deflected. "But it's absolutely what we need to talk about first," Rachel insisted firmly, her penetrating green eyes fixed. "You hid something absolutely fundamental about who you are. I, on the other hand, only omitted one detail, admittedly important, about having a daughter. Can you see the glaring difference in scale?" The waitress approached at that precise moment, temporarily saving Victoria from having to respond. Rachel ordered a simple chamomile tea, again, Victoria noted, the most economical option from the entire menu. "You're completely right," Victoria admitted as soon as they were alone again, deciding on radical honesty. "The difference is significant, and the responsibility is entirely mine. But the motive behind it wasn't malicious or manipulative." "So what was it?" Rachel encouraged, her gaze still fixed and challenging. "I desperately wanted to be seen for who I really am internally, not just for what I materially possess," Victoria finally let out, realizing how much it sounded like a worn cliché from a romantic movie. "I wanted a chance at genuine connection." As soon as the words left her mouth, an ironically bitter smile emerged on Rachel's lips. "The fundamental problem, Victoria, is that what you materially possess is inevitably an integral part of who you are as a person. Just like being a single mom is an inseparable part of who I am. We can't simply separate these dimensions as easily as we wish. What you possess is part of who you are." Rachel's words echoed in Victoria's mind with disturbing clarity, a truth she rarely allowed herself to honestly confront. Victoria took a deliberate sip of coffee, buying precious time to organize scattered thoughts. "You're absolutely right," she finally admitted with genuine humility, "but it's not the only part, nor necessarily the most important or definitive." "For you, perhaps not," Rachel responded, accepting the tea the waitress brought. "But for absolutely all the people you know socially, It's probably the first thing that defines you. The billionaire, the powerful CEO, the woman who moves markets. There was a sharp perceptiveness in her that constantly surprised Victoria, an ability to see beyond superficial layers and read between the lines, probably refined by years teaching children to decipher not just written words, but human intentions. "That's precisely why I'm here now," Victoria said, leaning slightly forward. "Because you don't seem to be like most people. You confront me directly instead of being impressed or submitting." Rachel observed her for a prolonged and evaluative moment, her green eyes studying every micro-expression. "Don't idealize or romanticize me, Victoria. I'm not some kind of pure and simple soul who's going to magically save you from the suffocating superficiality of your privileged world. I'm just a person trying to survive and raise a child." The cutting frankness caught her totally off guard. Women normally didn't talk to her like this, direct, without any fear of displeasing or offending. It was simultaneously disconcerting and deeply refreshing. "I'm not romanticizing anything," Victoria responded, firmly sustaining her gaze. "I'm just observing facts. When you discovered who I really am, you could have reacted in countless predictable ways. You could have feigned surprise and then tried to get close interested in my money. You could have blocked me and completely ignored me. Instead, you're here confronting me face to face. That says a lot about your character." "Maybe I just wanted to watch the circus catch fire up close," Rachel responded, with a tiny, ironic smile, the first since she'd arrived. The comment pulled a genuine laugh from Victoria, significantly dissipating the accumulated tension. "Fair enough," she admitted with a smile. She made a deliberate pause, then continued with renewed seriousness. "But speaking seriously, Rachel, I really feel deeply sorry for not having been completely honest from the beginning. It was selfish on my part." Rachel took a thoughtful sip of tea, carefully considering the words. "You know what bothered me most?" she finally asked, her voice slightly softening. "It wasn't the lie itself. It was realizing how absurdly easy it must be for you." "What do you mean?" Victoria frowned, genuinely confused. "Lying, pretending, creating characters and narratives," Rachel vaguely gestured with her free hand. "For someone like me, who can barely pay all the bills at the end of the month, the very idea of having the luxury of playing at being another person seems like an unreachable privilege. Do you understand?" The observation hit her with unexpected and devastating force. Victoria had never considered that specific angle, that her attempt to temporarily escape the weight of privilege was, in itself, an immense privilege that most people would never have. "I never thought about it from that perspective," she admitted with painful humility. "You're absolutely right. Thank you for showing me that." "So, why a dating app?" Rachel asked, subtly changing the course. "I'm absolutely certain there are infinitely more efficient ways for billionaires to meet people. Exclusive events, charity galas, refined social circles." "More efficient ways, yes," Victoria agreed. "More authentic? Definitely not. Charity events, exclusive gala parties, corporate dinners. All the places where I naturally circulate are completely filled with people who know exactly who I am, and, more importantly, how much I'm financially worth before we even exchange the first word." "And does that really matter so much to you?" Rachel asked, her voice carrying genuine curiosity. "Authenticity?" The apparently simple question made Victoria reflect deeply. Was it truly important? Or was it just another luxury she sought? Like someone who had already satisfied absolutely all basic material needs and now pursues abstract and unattainable concepts? "It's important," she finally responded with conviction. "Perhaps precisely because it's so rare in my corporate world. Scarcity creates value, as you yourself observed before." Rachel nodded slowly, a small smile emerging at the corner of her lips. "First economics lesson was free, billionaire professor," she gently teased. "I apologize." Victoria smiled back, grateful for breaking the persistent tension. "Incurable professional deformation." And you, Rachel, Victoria continued after a pause. Why were you on the app? I imagine your life is already sufficiently complicated without adding relationships to the equation. Rachel's expression closed slightly, revealing a momentary vulnerability. My sister insisted relentlessly, said 5 years was more than enough time of self-imposed solitude, that I deserved adult company. She shrugged with apparent casualness. Since Sophie was born, romantic relationships haven't exactly been a priority on my endless list of responsibilities. 5 years really is quite a while, Victoria commented carefully. Not when you have a small child, an exhausting full-time job, and bills that never stop coming, Rachel responded pragmatically. Besides, it's not exactly simple to date when you're a single mom. Most people, regardless of gender, run away at the first real sign of shared responsibility. I imagine it's challenging, Victoria said, then immediately corrected herself. Actually, no. I don't really imagine. Just like you can't really imagine what it's like to have billions to manage. They're completely distinct and incomparable realities. The silence that followed wasn't exactly uncomfortable, but definitely charged. Two people honestly recognizing the gigantic abyss between their worlds, trying to decide whether it was really worth trying to build some connecting bridge. How's Sophie? Victoria asked, surprising them both with the genuine question. Rachel's face immediately illuminated with that transformation Victoria already recognized, the unconditional maternal glow. Good. Very good. Preparing an elaborate school presentation about herbivorous dinosaurs. Apparently, the Triceratops is absolutely fascinating but terribly misunderstood by modern society. Her exact words? Exactly like that, with all the seriousness in the world, Rachel confirmed, evident pride overflowing in her voice. She has a surprisingly advanced vocabulary for her age. Reads constantly. Like her mother, I imagine. When I have some free time, yes, Rachel smiled, which happens approximately once a month, if I'm very lucky. She paused, then casually added, She asked about you, by the way. Really, Victoria felt that strange sensation in her chest again. Something between surprise and inexplicable satisfaction. She wanted to know if the lady with the shiny watch would come back and if you also liked dinosaurs. And what did you answer? That I didn't know the answer to either question yet. Victoria smiled slightly. I don't have a formed opinion about dinosaurs. I confess my ignorance. But as for the first question... She hesitated significantly. It depends entirely on you, Rachel. Rachel studied her for an intense, prolonged moment, as if trying to decipher a particularly complex text full of hidden meanings. Why? She finally asked, her voice soft but direct. Why specifically me? Why a public school teacher with a 5-year-old daughter, a financially complicated life, and practically no real points of contact with your luxury corporate world? It was the central and inevitable question, wasn't it? And even being a woman extremely accustomed to making quick decisions involving billions in seconds, Victoria realized she didn't have a completely ready or rehearsed answer. Honestly? She took a deep breath. I don't know for certain. Maybe for the same mysterious reason you're here now. Even knowing exactly who I am and having all legitimate reasons to deeply doubt my intentions. And what reason would that be? Rachel leaned slightly forward. Genuine curiosity? Deep exhaustion with the predictable? Or maybe... Victoria made a careful pause. Maybe that extremely rare moment when we find someone who seems to see beyond the carefully polished surface we present to the world. Something subtly changed in Rachel's gaze. A small opening, almost imperceptible, but definitely present. Are you asking to see us again? She asked directly. Yes, Victoria responded without any hesitation. With Sophie too, I presume, since she's an absolutely indivisible part of your life. Yes to both confirmations, Rachel nodded, but with some non-negotiable conditions. What are they? First, you need to understand and completely accept that we're an indivisible package, Sophie and I always. She comes before absolutely anything else. Always. I wouldn't expect anything different, Victoria responded with sincerity. Second, Rachel continued, we can't get lost in this abysmal difference of worlds and resources. I don't want extravagant gifts trying to compensate for inequalities or financial solutions offered for every small problem that appears. Do you understand what I'm saying? Victoria nodded, deeply understanding the vital importance of what Rachel was asking. It wasn't simply pride. It was dignity, identity, preservation of fundamental values. And third? She asked. Rachel took a small metaphorical step forward, diminishing the emotional distance between them. Third and most important, this has to be genuinely real. Not a fascinating social experiment, not a passing phase of rebellion, not a well-intentioned charity project. Real. The word significantly hovered between them, loaded with implicit promises and vulnerable expectations. Real is absolutely everything I want and seek, Victoria responded, feeling the deep truth resonate in each pronounced syllable. Sophie has swimming class Saturday morning, Rachel said, her voice softening. After that, we usually go to Central Park. Nothing remotely glamorous, just common swings, slides, and lots of running around. Sounds absolutely perfect, Victoria responded, and she realized with surprise she wasn't being polite. It really seemed perfect in a way she couldn't rationally explain. It won't be exactly up to the sophisticated company standards you normally keep, Rachel warned, a last remnant of protective caution in her voice. Victoria smiled with sincerity. I honestly believe it's the opposite, Rachel. And I'm more than willing to prove that, if you give me a real chance. Rachel considered for a moment that seemed to extend eternally, then nodded almost imperceptibly. Central Park, main entrance near 72nd Street, noon. I'll bring a simple lunch from home. Please. Nothing like showing up with elaborate baskets from award-winning restaurants or expensive imported wines. I solemnly promise to behave, Victoria responded, raising her hands in a gesture of sincere surrender. When they finally said goodbye in front of the cafe, there weren't ceremonial kisses on the cheek or dramatic promises, just a silent and significant agreement to honestly try, despite all the glaring differences. Victoria watched as Rachel walked determinedly toward the subway entrance, the worn bag familiarly swinging on her shoulder, the school tests still firmly in her hands. For a fleeting moment, she had the almost irresistible impulse to offer a comfortable ride, to show her imported car, to impress her with something material and tangible. The impulse quickly passed, replaced by a deeper and more mature understanding. Rachel didn't need her material possessions. And perhaps, just perhaps, Victoria didn't need the external validations she had always sought. What they both seemed to genuinely seek was more basic and infinitely rarer, the precious chance to be seen and accepted for who they really were, without fabricated expectations, without elaborate social masks. Saturday arrived wrapped in a perfect blue sky, one of those rare New York days without visible pollution. Victoria critically observed her reflection in the mirror for the 5th time, adjusting the collar of her cotton shirt. She had opted for simple dark jeans, comfortable sneakers, and a light blouse, as casual as humanly possible without seeming like she was trying exaggeratedly. She chose the least ostentatious car from her small collection, a discreet hybrid SUV that wouldn't scream billionaire to everyone around. Central Park was beautifully busy when she arrived. Families spread across the immense lawns, children running between colorful playground equipment, elderly couples slowly walking the shaded trails. A vibrant normality that hadn't been part of Victoria's carefully isolated life for a long time. At exactly noon, she spotted them. Rachel walked hand in hand with Sophie, who practically bounced more than walked, clearly in the middle of an animated story about something fascinating. They wore simple, colorful clothes. Rachel in jeans and a floral blouse, Sophie in a cheerful yellow dress, and a straw hat protecting her from the sun. They carried a worn school backpack and a modest cooler bag. Something about the scene, perhaps the unpretentious naturalness, the evident joy of the child, the infinite maternal patience with which Rachel listened to her daughter, made Victoria feel a surprisingly intense emotion tighten her chest. Before she could approach, Sophie spotted her. Her eyes widened dramatically, and she pulled her mother's hand with pure enthusiasm, pointing. "Mommy, look, it's the watch lady. She really came." Rachel followed her daughter's gaze, and, when her eyes met Victoria's, a genuine and involuntary smile completely illuminated her face. The next few hours were a transformative revelation. Victoria Matthews, billionaire CEO of Matthews Capital, woman whose schedule was disputed by presidents of multinational corporations, spent the afternoon pushing a 5-year-old girl on a swing, helping her climb the tallest slide, and listening to detailed explanations about the fascinating differences between Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus. Observing discreetly, she noticed how Rachel interacted with Sophie, the complete attention dedicated to her daughter, the infinite patience with repetitive questions, the perfect balance between establishing clear limits and allowing creative freedom. It was a complex dance executed with natural grace that came from years of dedicated practice and unconditional love. When they finally had a simple picnic under the shade of a leafy tree, Victoria sat on the grass next to Rachel, conscious of how unusual and liberating that situation was. She couldn't remember the last time she had sat directly on grass, without worries about expensive clothes or appearances to maintain. Rachel took from the cooler bag simple sandwiches wrapped in plastic wrap, fresh fruits cut in a reused plastic container, and natural juices in bottles. "I hope you like cheese and tomato sandwiches," she said, offering one to Victoria. "It's the Modest House specialty." There was a subtle vulnerability in her gesture, sharing what she had without pretense or shame, but also without knowing if it would be enough for someone accustomed to so much. "It looks absolutely delicious," Victoria responded, accepting with sincerity. And it really was. They ate in comfortable silence, interrupted only by Sophie's enthusiastic comments about a nearby blue butterfly, or a cloud with a curious dragon shape. Victoria observed fascinated how Rachel gently cleaned the corner of her daughter's mouth, the meticulous care with which she cut the apple into pieces small enough not to represent a choking danger. Small gestures of daily love that revealed much more than words. "You're naturally incredible at this," Victoria commented quietly, while Sophie was distracted chasing the butterfly. "At what?" Rachel asked, genuinely confused. "Being a mom, caring, loving without conditions." Rachel blushed softly. "It's a constant work in progress. I make mistakes every single day, constantly doubt myself." "It doesn't seem that way," Victoria said honestly. "That's the magic of motherhood." Rachel smiled with tenderness. "Even when we're completely exhausted, frustrated, or totally lost, somehow we find the strength to be exactly what they need in the moment." At that instant, watching Rachel shield her eyes from the sun while watching Sophie play, Victoria realized something fundamental. She was completely in love. Not with the dramatic story, not with the exotic novelty of a different world, but with the real woman. Strong, vulnerable, authentic, sitting beside her. "Rachel," she said softly. She turned, her green eyes meeting Victoria's with an openness that didn't exist before. "Thank you for giving me this chance, for giving us this chance." Rachel smiled, and this time, when their hands touched on the grass, it was intentional. "Thank you for showing up," she responded simply. "For being real." Ahead of them, Sophie spun in her yellow dress, laughing out loud, completely immersed in the pure joy of childhood. "You're going to like us," the girl declared, with the unshakable confidence typical of children. "We're small, but we're really good people." Victoria felt the words deeply touch something inside her, a place that billions had never reached. "I already like you immensely," she responded with absolute sincerity. And as the New York sun bathed all three with golden late-afternoon light, Victoria Matthews, the billionaire who always knew how to calculate the precise value of everything, finally discovered that some things were genuinely priceless. A true smile, a hand holding hers with confidence, a child offering a common little stone as a precious treasure, a woman seeing beyond the money and glimpsing the real person behind it. Months later, when Sophie would ask, "Is Victoria going to stay with us forever?" and Rachel would look at her seeking the answer, Victoria would know exactly what to say. Because for the first time in her entire life, she had found something that no investment could buy, no strategy could guarantee. She had found a family. She had found a home. She had found true love. And that, Victoria realized with absolute certainty, was worth infinitely more than all the billions in the world. We're reaching the end of this emotional story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and comment which was your favorite part. Your support is fundamental for us to continue bringing stories that touch the heart. The following weeks unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance between two very different worlds, slowly learning each other's rhythms. Victoria found herself doing things she'd never imagined, attending Sophie's school play about recycling, where the 5-year-old played an enthusiastic talking water bottle, learning to make simple pasta dinners in Rachel's modest Brooklyn apartment, and discovering that the best conversations often happened while helping a child with homework at a kitchen table covered with crayons and spelling worksheets. Rachel's apartment was exactly as Victoria had imagined, a cozy 2-bedroom in Park Slope, with mismatched furniture that had clearly been collected over years, walls covered with Sophie's colorful artwork, and a small balcony where Rachel cultivated herbs and tomatoes in repurposed containers. It was the complete opposite of Victoria's minimalist penthouse, and yet it felt more like a home than anywhere Victoria had ever lived. "I can't believe you've never made spaghetti from scratch." Rachel had laughed that first evening Victoria came for dinner, watching her struggle with the simple task of boiling water. "I have people for that," Victoria had responded automatically, then immediately winced at how that sounded. "I mean, I had people for that. I'm learning." Sophie, sitting at the table coloring a picture of dinosaurs, had looked up seriously. "It's okay not to know things, Victoria. That's what learning is for. My teacher says so." And somehow, a 5-year-old's wisdom had made it okay for a billionaire CEO to be completely incompetent at basic life skills. Victoria started keeping a change of casual clothes at her office, slipping away from board meetings to make it to Sophie's soccer practice in Prospect Park. She learned the names of Sophie's classmates, the intricate social dynamics of kindergarten friendship, and the critical importance of remembering show-and-tell days. She also learned about Rachel's world in ways that humbled her. One evening, she arrived at the apartment to find Rachel at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills and a calculator, her face drawn with stress. "Everything okay?" Victoria had asked, already knowing the answer. "Just juggling," Rachel had replied, not looking up. "Sophie needs new shoes. She's growing so fast, and the school is asking for supplies donations, and the car registration is due, and..." She'd trailed off, rubbing her temples. Victoria's first instinct was to pull out her credit card, to solve everything with money, to make all those worries disappear. But she'd learned enough by then to know that wasn't what Rachel needed. Instead, she'd sat down across from her. "Can I help you look at the numbers? Maybe we can find a way to prioritize or adjust." Rachel had looked up, surprised. "You want to help me budget on a teacher's salary?" "I want to help you with whatever you need help with," Victoria had said simply. That's what partners do, right? The word partners had hung in the air between them. The first time either had explicitly named what was growing between them. Rachel's eyes had softened. "Yeah," she'd said quietly. "That's what partners do." They'd worked through the budget together, Victoria's financial expertise finding small efficiencies that added up, while respecting Rachel's absolute rule: no handouts, no bailouts, no using Victoria's money to solve Rachel's problems. But Victoria could suggest switching to a different phone plan that saved $30 a month. She could share an article about a city program that helped public school teachers with professional development funds. She could offer to pick Sophie up from school on Thursdays, saving Rachel the cost of after-school care that day. Small things, respectful things. Things that helped without undermining Rachel's fierce independence. And in return, Rachel was teaching Victoria things no business school had ever covered. How to be present. How to find joy in simple moments. How to prioritize what actually mattered over what seemed important. "You work too much," Rachel had said one Saturday morning when Victoria was checking emails during breakfast. "I'm the CEO. It's expected." "Sophie's watching you," Rachel had interrupted gently, nodding toward the little girl who was indeed studying Victoria with those observant eyes. "She's learning what adult life looks like. What do you want to teach her?" Victoria had put the phone down and hadn't picked it up again until Monday. The hardest part, Victoria discovered, wasn't the cultural differences or the financial disparities. It was navigating the reactions of both their worlds. Her board members had opinions about her lifestyle choices affecting her judgment. Some of Rachel's teacher friends had concerns about power imbalances. Victoria's mother, calling from her retirement community in Florida, had questions about what this means for the family legacy. "Let them talk," Rachel had said one evening after Victoria had come home frustrated from a particularly judgmental board meeting. "We know what we have. That's what matters. It doesn't bother you, the scrutiny, the assumptions." Rachel had taken her hand. "I've been judged my entire adult life for being a single mom who got left by her partner. I've heard it all. That I'm damaged goods, that I make poor choices, that Sophie will suffer without a traditional family. People will always have opinions about lives they don't understand." She'd squeezed Victoria's fingers. "But here's what I know. Sophie is thriving. I'm happier than I've been in years. And you're becoming more human every day. That's not nothing." "More human?" Victoria had raised an eyebrow. "When I first met you, you were like a very impressive, very polished robot," Rachel had said, smiling. "Now you laugh at Sophie's terrible jokes. You cry during Disney movies. You get pasta sauce on your designer blouses and don't even care. You're real." And Victoria realized Rachel was right. Somewhere between learning to braid Sophie's hair and accepting that yes, they were going to be late sometimes because finding a lost stuffed animal was important, she'd become a different person. Not less capable, not less successful, just more complete. 3 months into their relationship, Victoria did something she'd never done before. She turned down a major acquisition deal because the timeline would have required her to travel during Sophie's birthday week. "Are you sure?" her CFO had asked, bewildered. "This is a $50 million opportunity." "I'm sure," Victoria had said. "There will be other deals. There's only one 6th birthday for Sophie." The party was at a community center in Brooklyn. Nothing like the lavish affairs Victoria had attended or hosted. There were 20 kids running around screaming, pizza from a local place, and a homemade birthday cake that Rachel had stayed up until midnight decorating. Victoria had been in charge of games and had never worked harder in her life. "You're really good at this," Ma, one of Rachel's teacher friends, had commented, watching Victoria organize a surprisingly enthusiastic round of musical chairs. "I'm used to managing chaos," Victoria had replied, dodging a running 6-year-old. "Board meetings prepared me well." When Sophie had blown out her candles and made a wish, she'd looked directly at Victoria and Rachel, standing together behind her, Rachel's hand casually resting on Victoria's arm. Later, after all the guests had left, and Sophie was crashed on the couch in a sugar coma, Rachel had pulled Victoria aside. "She wished for you to be part of our family officially," Rachel had said softly. "She told me while I was tucking her in." Victoria's heart had done something complicated in her chest. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that some wishes take time, but that the best ones are worth waiting for." Rachel had looked at her steadily. "I also told her that Victoria is already family. We just haven't had a ceremony about it yet." "Is that what you want?" Victoria had asked, hardly daring to breathe. "A ceremony?" "Eventually," Rachel had said, her smile soft and sure. When we're ready, when it feels right. But Victoria, I need you to understand what you'd be signing up for. It's not just Sophie and me. It's parent-teacher conferences and childhood illnesses and teenage drama and college tuition. It's ordinary, sometimes boring, often exhausting real life. Victoria had pulled Rachel close. That's exactly what I want, she'd whispered, the extraordinary ordinariness of it all. With you. With Sophie. This messy, imperfect, absolutely perfect life. They'd kissed then, gentle and certain, while Sophie snored softly on the couch, and New York traffic hummed outside the windows. Over the following months, they built their life together, brick by careful brick. Victoria slowly, with Rachel's permission, became more involved financially, not taking over, but contributing in ways that felt balanced. She set up a college fund for Sophie. She invested in upgrading Rachel's old, unreliable car to something safer but still modest. She funded a community literacy program at Rachel's school, making it a Matthews Capital initiative, but giving Rachel full creative control. In return, Rachel helped Victoria reconnect with parts of herself she'd buried under ambition and achievement. They took walks in Prospect Park talking about books, not business. They had lazy Sunday mornings with pancakes and newspapers. They built blanket forts with Sophie and had serious discussions about whether unicorns or dragons were superior magical creatures. Victoria learned that success wasn't just measured in profit margins and market share. It was measured in Sophie running to hug her when she walked through the door. It was measured in Rachel's smile when Victoria remembered to buy her favorite tea without being asked. It was measured in the life they were creating together. Imperfect, complicated, and more valuable than any balance sheet could capture. One evening, about 6 months into their relationship, Victoria came home to find Rachel and Sophie at the kitchen table with art supplies everywhere. "We're making a family tree for school," Sophie explained, showing Victoria the large poster board covered with branches and leaves. "See? Here's Mommy, and here's me, and Mommy said I could put you here if you wanted." Sophie pointed to a spot next to Rachel, connected by a carefully drawn heart. Victoria looked at Rachel, who met her gaze with quiet certainty. "Yeah," Victoria said, her voice catching slightly. "I'd like that very much." As Sophie carefully wrote Victoria in her best kindergarten handwriting, adding hearts and stars around it, Victoria realized this was what she'd been searching for all along. Not an escape from her life, but an expansion of it. Not someone to fix or save her, but someone to build with. Not perfection, but authentic, messy, beautiful reality. She'd spent 40 years building an empire, and it had taken a teacher and a 5-year-old to show her what was truly worth investing in. Love, family, home. The things that couldn't be bought, only built. One ordinary, extraordinary moment at a time. And as Sophie announced that their family tree was the best one in the whole class and demanded they hang it on the refrigerator immediately, Victoria caught Rachel's eye and saw her entire future reflected there. It looked absolutely perfect.